service in the community. I can't give you statistics off the top of my head this evening, but I would be willing to bet if you ask Mr. Dino or any other law enforcement official that there's a significant amount of the calls for service that police respond to, not only in North Reading but across the nation, where communities support alcohol pouring or alcohol serving establishments, that a significant number of the calls for service involve alcohol. We respond to about 250 domestic violence incidents per year, and probably better than 50% involve alcohol. In the establishments in the community that serve alcohol, we have a high instance of disturbances that range from a noise, patrons leaving after a couple of drinks, their inhibitions are lowered, and they have a tendency to forget that their voices are traveling. So this is located in a residential area, and I have no doubt, based upon past experiences, that we will respond there to noise complaints. We also respond to fights. Again, alcohol lowers inhibitions. And some of these well-run establishments, no matter how hard they try, how well they monitor, you don't know how an alcoholic beverage will impact an individual, whether they're having with food or not. I have a lot of anecdotal stories. I can give you one. We had an individual who was stopped for driving under the influence in North Reading, and he exhibited all the classic signs of alcohol. There was a strong odor of alcohol coming from his breath and his person. All the stuff you would hear in court in the traditional testimony, and the individual said, "I've only had one drink," and I'm sure Mr. Delaney has heard that in court. I've only had one drink, and in reality he had 4 or 5. But in this particular instance, this individual had one drink. Fortunately for him, he did take the breathalyzer exam, and it proved that his story was valid. But the point of the story is that one drink impacted that individual so greatly on that one evening that it caused him to exhibit the signs and symptoms of drunk driving, and resulted in his arrest, but subsequently he was released. And we have lots of stories like that. Our department responds to many calls for service. Many of them are alcohol related. And when you add in alcohol to the mix, it becomes that X factor that in all likelihood is going to increase the calls for service to the police department to a place that there is none. We've never had a call, as far as I know, there in my 40 years on the job. But you add alcohol to the mix, I can almost assure you that we will eventually.
Mr. Messeri, if I may. Chief, it's a pleasure to see you. It's our third hearing relative to the Senate Cafe. It's a pleasure to see you. Appreciate Sergeant Romeo coming the last couple of occasions and giving his input, but I understand that he was sort of sent here, a volunteer to come here. He's really probably wasn't the appropriate party to address the concerns of this board. So, but it's appreciated that you're here this evening. Concerning your memorandum to the town administrator dated December 2nd, I must say I'm disappointed. I believe it's woefully inadequate in terms of what we need to do to evaluate the worthiness or unworthiness of the applicant's application for a beer and wine license. I mean, you give us just simply, without any supporting data, the number of accidents between 1996 and 2009. I would have liked and had expected to see much more detail concerning those accidents. It's one thing to throw out numbers, but it's another thing to see the evidence behind it. And it's also one thing to suggest that alcohol is a factor. It could lead to accidents, but I'd like to know, in terms of Mario's restaurant, how many times has your department had to respond there to a fight or an accident coming out of that parking lot that was attributed to the consumption of alcohol on the premises? The Horseshoe Cafe, how many times have your department had to respond to a fight attributable to alcohol at that location, or an accident coming out of that location that was attributable to alcohol? Likewise, China cuisine, we can go down and up and down the list of all the establishments in town that have either a full alcohol license or a beer and wine license. That, I would have expected your department and you to put someone in charge of gathering that data and presenting it to us. I mean, I think that would be compelling data, other than just a conclusion that alcohol could be a contributing factor to accidents. I think that's widely understood and known, but without any supporting data behind the evidence that you present, I think it's borderline useless, so, with all due respect. And it's very difficult for me to determine what you're trying to suggest by what you gave us, because it's inadequate. Do you have any of that information concerning accidents or disturbances at any of the other establishments in town that you and or your department attributed to alcohol? Do you have that data?
In my opening comments, I said I did not have that data available this evening. In defense of the department, we've never, ever had to produce a detailed report like that for any liquor license or a business application in the past. So it's a point well taken, and in the future that we will do our best to provide that kind of information.
What about
Yeah.
what about the accident data? You know, this applicant came before us about 7 months ago initially, and you point out in this memorandum that there was personal confidential information contained in your reports that would have taken time to redact it. Well, 7 months, 8 months have gone by. I would have hoped that someone in the department would have had the ability, you direct them to do that so we could have that, because I'm assuming you know what the concern is at that location, the corner of Washington and Park. I'm just disappointed that we still don't, 7, 8 months into this, we don't have that data.
Well, again, in defense of the department, we went
Chief,
through the record
Chief, if I
reduction.
may, I'm not pointing a finger at any of your men. You're the chief of that department.
That's fine.
And
I'll
appointing
take
it,
whatever lump you want to give out.
it's not a lump, it's just that
Let me respond to that.
I had expected to be provided with that information.
The department went through a records reduction process following the state records destruction through the town clerk and the state, and we destroyed all records up until 2 years ago. So we have no old accident data unless there was involved a fatality. So they're gone. So we have no means outside of a log entry that the department responded to those accidents. So the information is just not there.
What about for the last 2 years?
Additionally, though, we had the hearing, 7 months ago. The chief and his department issued the report to us. The board made a determination not to issue the license, and it was appealed, went before the ABCC, and that decision was upheld. I think it's a little bit unfair to be chastising the chief for something that he wasn't asked for, that something that was deemed acceptable. The report that was produced just less than 6 months ago or 7 months ago was deemed acceptable by every member of this board at this particular time, because it was never asked for. No discussion of this nature has taken place up until this evening. Now all of a sudden we need details that we've never asked for in all the years that I've been sitting here on this board since 1988. So.
Well, but
I think
we were presented with
we're grasping a little bit here, or some of us may be grasping a little bit.
Mr. O'Leary, I disagree. I'm not grasping. I've been presented, as we all were, with a memorandum that has a conclusion without any supporting.
We asked the department how many accidents were at Park and Washington Street.
Well,
We didn't ask
in my
what happened
opinion,
with other establishments and other liquor licenses, and how many arrests have there been, or none of that.
well, hold on. It's 2 separate issues. Chief provided a memorandum. It's appreciated. It's a memorandum, but all it has is the bottom line without supporting detail behind it. It's very difficult to cull anything out of this. It was the chief that brought up alcohol influences things that could happen.
Based
And
on
that-
40 years, based on 40 years in the department.
Sure. But And they said the department responds to fights, disturbances, then domestic abuse calls. I'm sure that's what the department does. But if we're talking about an applicant's application for a license to sell alcohol, if chief wants to come and present that information, then I would have thought he would have had the information concerning the other liquor establishments in town. That's when we can do a full analysis as to whether or not, and that's how you could probably predict what may happen in the future, although that may not be, according to case law, a reason to deny the application. But if you can put some meat on the bone, so to speak, that would have been worthwhile for this discussion.
Mr. Vino.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Mr. Delaney, I respectfully have to disagree with you 100%. The chief has presented to us what we asked for. I've been on many liquor licenses, and the police department has never given us a report on every alcohol business in town. Had we asked for that, I'm sure we would have gotten it. I agree with Mr. O'Leary. I just think that the chief and his department did exactly what we asked them to do. We didn't ask for a full list of Marios and Kitties and whatever.
That's right, we didn't, because it wasn't raised. The chief raised it when he stood up in his opening comments this evening.
Well, no, I'm talking about our request right here. Per your request of December 1st, 2009. That was when the request was made for this, and that's what we got.
Right, and the chief is getting up presenting not only that, but a secondary argument concerning his department's response.
I'm not talking about that.
No,
I'm not talking about that.
you are, because you said
No,
that
I'm not.
we
I'm
didn't
talking
ask for
about
it.
this right here. We didn't ask for it.
No, but he
Chief rose it. My
but he's
point is
raised-
the chief
he's raised-
rose.
He's raised a question in my mind, Joe, and that is, what the chief has said is, you know, if I were to read it based on what he said, was that wherever there's a liquor license, there's problems. You know, and I gather, based on that, if there were no liquor licenses in town, there wouldn't be the kinds of issues that the chief described, and I guess this is just adding one more. But I don't think you can be fair to the applicant in drawing a comparison, right? You know, I think this whole thing started out with the safety aspect of this area and the parking. Those were the prime areas, and of course the neighbors' concerns over alcohol. Even though it's in a business district, it is adjacent to an area that in the past hasn't served liquor, although Brothers didn't have a liquor license, right? No. Well, what?
Brothers had a lot of parking.
Yeah, they had parking, that was the difference. So, any other questions for the chief at this point? Mr. O'Brien's been standing. I hope you haven't been standing, because you could raise your hand to be heard.
You need the pain, you recognize.
Okay, I assume you were standing for the pain. All right. I don't want anyone to feel that I was making someone with crutches stand.
Hey, Chuck, let me applaud the chief for the report. Alcohol misuse is a problem, and I don't dispute that a bit. I'm having a little problem with what's going on here. I am a neighbor. My name is Nick O'Brien. I live 4 houses on this intersection. I must go through that intersection 8 or 9 times a day. And that includes 6 o'clock in the morning, 8, 9 o'clock at night. I've not seen a problem. I am aware of the intersection. It has been changed, by the way, twice since I've lived in the neighborhood. Mr. Dave Hanlon redesigned that intersection with the help of the then police chief. And my wife was on board with it too, because she was concerned about the intersection. Also, the people that did Route 62 over again redesigned the intersection. I note that they've taken a blinking yellow light out. I guess it's not that dangerous. They didn't put a light back in. My concerns are this. It's probably been 7, 8, maybe 9 businesses